I muted a bar customer, by user Cozy Night. When I used to bartend, I tried to have tolerance of people and their situations. Sometimes people would come in and have the worst attitudes. Usually by the time their night was over, there'd be some type of calm/apologetic tone when they closed their tabs. Then there was this one girl. She was in her early 20s and was with a guy friend sitting at the bar. I carded them and she immediately gave an attitude about it. Then after reading the martini menu, I worked at a bar that specialized in martinis. She made a few comments about how the martinis better be worth it. She ordered her first martini, a thin mint. Her friend ordered a dirty. I made both at the same time and put the glasses in front of them and walked to other customers. I went to check on them 10 minutes later and she berates me for the shitty martinis I made and the thin mint tastes like ass, even though she managed to drink almost all of it. Her friend liked his martini and ordered another and apparently tried to calm her down. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, took the martini away and asked what she would like instead of that one and also, free of charge. She asked for a fruity martini with the same attitude. I made both martinis, set them down in front of them and walk away. More people came in and it gets decently busy. The other bartender comes up to me and says that she wants to talk to me. I walk up to her and again, the martini, also, almost finished, was the worst and this is the worst establishment she's ever been to and won't ever come in again. I give them the tab to get them to leave. 15 minutes later, she is now yelling about the awful service and telling other customers that they shouldn't stay in the bar with shitty drinks and how she could make better martinis. She was awful and after her friend paid the tab, no tip, I told her in no uncertain terms that she is never allowed back into the bar. She asked to speak to the manager and I said I was the manager. Here's the petty. 2 weeks later, her friend, BEA, is having a birthday party at the bar. B's friends are all showing up to celebrate with her. In walks the girl who berated me, the bar, and the other customers. I looked at her and told her that she was not allowed into the bar and needed to leave. That I was not up to dealing with anything out of her mouth nor her attitude. She pleads with me to please let her stay as it's her best friend's birthday blah, blah. BEA asks if there's anything she could do to stay. So I tell them that she can stay but she cannot say one word or sound the entire time she is there. If I or anyone else in that bar hears anything, she needs to leave. The entire night she had to use pen and paper or her phone to communicate. It was also even more embarrassing for her because a few of the regulars that saw her the first time let it be known to the entire bar why she was muted. It became a game with them to try to get her to make a sound. TLDR, bar customer came in, was a terror and then got muted the next time she was there. Left my old place due to bad management. My Glassdoor review comes up a lot in their interview process, by user Dennis@NFU. So I had been working at a small agency for 8 years. I worked my way up from a junior to senior management very quickly. For most of the 8 years. The managers were very nice to me. But I witnessed them be shitty to other members of staff a lot. But because it never involved me or my team, I never stepped in. A few months before I left, something happened where my MD was yelling at me in front of my team. This was something completely out of my control, and in the grand scheme of things, completely fixable and a non-issue, it was just I didn't have the correct information for her there and then. I typically handed in my notice after this incident and made it clear of my distaste in the management. After I left, I put a very honest but fair review on Glassdoor. I mentioned the manager's mood swings and historic abusive behavior. It's been 4 months since I left there and I feel so much happier. I'm still in contact with a few people that work there as I was great friends with them. They've been telling me that my review has caused them to lose 3 great candidates in interviews and has caused others to start putting more information on Glassdoor about them. The MD's salary was put on there and it has been quite a stir. She earned triple of what I was making yet all of us did triple the amount of work she did. I've heard that 4 people have handed their notice in this week alone. The place is only a 20-person company. I've heard from one of the staff members that my review, although the managers don't fully know it was my review, has caused the 2 managers to finally see the issues with each other and now they're blaming each other for it. Edit, sigh. Very typical of this subreddit to create their own narrative for your story. Please only take what is here, don't create your own fabricated hypotheticals to paint me into this shitty pathetic manager when my department was never/rarely ever the one getting shouted at. EDIT2, genuinely shocked by the downvotes to my comments. People really expecting to go against my colleagues' wishes and go after the manager after they shouted at them? That would just make my colleagues hate me as well for going against their wishes. Estranged father called the police on us while grieving our mother's death. Fine, you can clean everything up, by user careless_occasion. Disclaimer, I'm not the best storyteller, but I had to share this because I continue to get joy from this. TLDR at the bottom. Short backstory. My mother, who I was very close with, passed away suddenly from COVID 3 days before Christmas last year, 2021. I live on the other side of the country and my brother lives on the other side of the state from where our mom lived, so we arrived the next day and stayed at her home, our former childhood home, to try and deal with everything surrounding a sudden death as well as take care of her cats. My father, we'll call him S, has been estranged since I was about 12 years old, and I have not spoken to him since then. He was not, and is not, a nice person, so I am definitely not missing out on anything. My parents never bothered to divorce. Why? I have no idea. On to the petty revenge. A few days after my mom passed, I woke up around 11 a.m. due to being in a different time zone. My brother is still asleep as he works night shift. This is relevant, I promise. After my brief morning routine, I notice a police car in the driveway and head outside to find out what's going on. The officer asked if I lived there, so I explained the above story to him as to why I was there. At this point I had started crying, having to go through everything again. The officer then asked if I knew someone named S, which completely floored me. I told him yes, I did. He is my father, who I have no spoken to in over 15 years. The officer then tells me that S called the police saying that someone was trespassing on his property and wanted them out, the someone being my brother and I. Apparently, S came to my mom's house early that morning, and no one answered the door as we were both asleep. He assumed we were ignoring him, and called the police. My brother has his number blocked, but he called and left a voicemail saying he would be back with the police to bust the door down, which we heard later that day. Since my parents never divorced, and my mom's will was almost 30 years old at this point, that meant that the house was legally his now. After the officer explained to me the situation, I see S pull in the driveway. The officer tells me that I did not need to interact with him at all and said I could wait inside while he spoke with him. S ended up giving us until the end of the day to leave the premises. So my brother and I, along with a couple of family members that lived nearby, helped us collect some of our childhood possessions and photo albums and left. I flew home the next day. What S arrived to the next day, no, he was there, he texted me asking where my mom kept her cash, was a disaster. My mom had 2 elderly cats that had issues with finding the litter box at times, so there was cat pee and cat poop scattered through the house that we didn't bother to clean up. There was decomposing food in the kitchen. A couch was overturned in the living room, we had to flip it to catch one of the cats. The trash had not been taken out. There were dirty dishes in the sink. On top of that, he had now a house with over 30 years of accumulated belongings that he now had to clean and empty by himself. My brother and I had planned on cleaning as well as we could, as well as start the process of preparing the house to sell, but thanks to S calling the police on us, that was now all his problem. He ended up sending my brother a letter through a family member complaining about how messy we left the house and how much money he had to spend to empty the property. It's shocking how actions have consequences. TLDR, estranged father called the police due to my brother and I staying at my just deceased mom's home that he now owned, so he got to clean up cat shit and pay thousands of dollars to fix the property. Edit, since people are rightfully concerned, cats are fine and in new homes. They didn't have to deal with S at all. Honk at me because you want me to leave my parking spot faster, by user JLB183. Years ago I attended a large urban university that I commuted to. This university had many commuters, as opposed to people who lived near or on campus. As such, the parking situation could get really difficult. If you arrived there during the busier times, about 10 am noon, because what college student wants to start class before 10 am, right, finding a parking spot close to the center of campus was really difficult. There were plenty of spaces available at lots that were located further away, but that would mean a 15 or 20-minute walk to class. My first class of the day, however, was at 8 am. So I could drive right into the main parking deck near the center of campus and have my pick of spots. By the time I would leave campus, the parking deck would be full of panicked students driving like maniacs through the parking deck, trying to find a parking spot in the very full deck, and hoping to get lucky that they'd see someone pulling out and be able to snag that spot. It was really chaotic. Typically, I would return to my car, get in, carefully pull out into the madness, and drive home. But one day, another driver was stalking me on my walk to my car and then watching me get in when they decided that I wasn't leaving fast enough. So they honked their horn at me and made a rude gesture. As a result of that, I suddenly realized that my window washer fluid needed topped off and I had better check my oil. I deliberately walked to the back of my car, opened the hatch, and got out my spare bottle of washer fluid and a paper towel. I then popped the hood and carefully filled the washer reservoir and checked my oil. The idiot that had honked at me drove off in a rage. The guy that was stuck behind the rage driver was laughing and gave me plenty of room to pull out of my spot, and then pulled into the now vacant parking space. Most satisfying petty revenge ever. Leave me out to dry after I bring your company record profits? Let's see how that plays out for you, by user the Noble High. Backstory: circa 2017, I worked at a small, 36-room condo hotel on Marco Island, Florida, and that property was owned by a small venture capitalist firm ran by two wealthy siblings and one of their sons. I was brought on board by a colleague who was hired as the general manager. Since this was a new/small operation that had pretty much zero actual industry knowledge or expertise, it was basically the GM and myself who were responsible for bringing real changes to the property while also wearing multiple hats and doing the job of several roles with our industry experience. There was only one other office employee who was a curmudgeonly old lady, ironically her name was actually Karen LOL, who basically just did the billing for unit owners and sat in the back when she could. I myself was responsible for, not only the day-to-day front desk presence, phone presence, concierge presence, assigning daily housekeeping duties, and running a brief night audit, but most importantly also managing the business revenue strategy/competitive set, and online room inventory with our own website and major OTA companies like Expedia/Booking/Trivago/etc. 2017 was a record year for us and my revenue strategy earned the company several tens of thousands of dollars more than previous years by comparison. Then shit starts slowly hitting the fan Q2 Q3. My colleague, the GM, resigned due to personal issues completely unrelated to his work performance. That brought the office staff down to 2 people, Karen and I. Karen had this month-long trip to Italy planned like 2 years in advance, so she was going to go regardless. Karen flies out in the midst of the news that there's a bad hurricane a few days out from landfall. Cue Hurricane Irma. For those unaware of hurricane grading, Irma made landfall in the US as a Category 4. That is staggeringly powerful. For reference, Katrina, which devastated New Orleans in 2005, was also a Cat 4. Needless to say, everyone was on high alert and made plans to evacuate. During my evacuation, not on the clock or being paid by the company whatsoever, the firm's accountant called me on my personal phone asking me to walk her through the steps of how to remotely run the property management systems audit. With hotel computer systems, the day doesn't actually end until you tell the system that the day is over, and that it's time to run reports/tally up the numbers, so if no one is there to do the audit, the hotel will permanently be stuck on a previous day. I spent about 2 hours on the phone with her while evacuating from a natural disaster, and I was never compensated for it. Irma ended up making landfall on the island I worked on, and the entire surrounding area lost power for about a week. We all returned to devastation, some of our rooms on the top floor having theirs walls and roof blown out, and slowly trying to pick the pieces back up. My hours were cut from 40 per week to about 16 per week as the damage from the hurricane drove business way down. I was beginning to struggle financially, and I was forced to use all my PTO and vacation days I had earned up to this point to keep full paychecks coming in, as I was just some single 24 to 25-year-old guy who lived alone, and the company offered absolutely zero roadmap for getting back to full-time compensation. I sent the CEO, who I spoke with every week in revenue meetings, an email explaining the situation and asking for a possible advance to make ends meet for the time being. The email I got back was basically one sentence to the effect of, "OP, we'll be open again soon, thanks." Bold strategy, let's see how that plays out for you considering I'm the literal only person running the hotel operations right now. Within a week, I secured an interview for a better paying job closer to home, crushed the interview, and kept it completely to myself. The CEO's brother, the CFO, had flown down to be on property for the first day of the reopening where business started to come back to normal. The day before the reopening, while in the office, I got a call from HR at the new company confirming the job offer, and to stop by later that day to finalize everything. I called the CFO and asked him to come down to the office because I wanted to talk. The second he got there and he asked what's up, I told him I was resigning effective immediately. Him, "OP, you realize that'll make it hard for us to open tomorrow, right?" Me, "Nothing personal. Just like your company has financial concerns that prevent you from keeping your only employee here to run the hotel, I also have financial concerns that prevent me from staying here as I have bills to pay. You'll be open again soon, don't worry. He gritted his teeth and said, okay then. I handed over my key to the property, got in my car, and never looked back.